What can the mayor even do? My name is Michael Lentz, and I'm running for mayor of Coeur d'Alene. In my previous videos, if you've seen them, I've done a whole series on growth, on density, on outside investment, and on multinational corporations. All of those videos were just off the cuff, just me talking about my thoughts on the issue, explaining things, and a few potential solutions. And so in this video, I want to go over more specifically, what can the mayor do? Because I'm running for mayor. This one's actually going to be outlined. I have a whole outline for this one because I wanted to make sure that I cover everything, that I'm organized and kind of timely, because there's a lot to go over and I didn't want to miss anything. So if you'd like to get involved, strongyoungmayor.com is where you can find me. I'm not asking for any donations. I'm just asking for your time and your help. If you want to keep Coeur d'Alene special, you have to get involved. So I'm going to reference a couple times during this video the white paper created by David Callahan. David Callahan and his other planning associates. David Callahan is the county planner. So he basically put together this white paper that kind of explains some ways in which the county could do some things to manage growth. One of the things that they mentioned in this white paper is back in 2018, they're estimating that Kootenai County has 167,000 residents in 2019, and how that number is going to go to 227,000 in 2030 and over 304,000 by 2040. Now, that was in 2018 that they did that estimate. That was before the big boom of the last couple of years. So obviously those projections would increase. So what that means is Coeur d'Alene is currently at roughly about 52,000, according to census data. So that would put Coeur d'Alene by 2040, if it increased at the same pace as the rest of the county. That's basically a 100% increase. Put it somewhere around 100,000 people from 52,000. So everything around growth is very time sensitive, because if nothing is done in the next several election cycles, because all of these things take time to implement, then the train leaves the station, essentially, and you can't catch up. So you have to be proactive, and you have to do things now, which includes elect people who are going to do things. Not just me, we do need some turnover on the city council, because there's obviously people on the city council who aren't willing to do things about growth, who aren't willing to take any initiative, and certainly aren't willing to make tough decisions to protect the area. So what can the mayor do? Why am I running for mayor? The reason I'm running for mayor, number one, is because of the time sensitiveness. The biggest reason was that when I looked at who was running, Joe and Jim, two retired Republicans, and looking at what they thought about growth and what they thought about the area, I just thought there's no way, there's got to be somebody else who gets in here who's going to do something about growth. There has to be somebody else. So I waited all the way till the end of the filing deadline, and I filed to run the day before the last day to file. And I jumped in because there has to be another option. There has to be somebody who's going to do something. And it's one of those moments where somebody has to do something and nobody was going to do it. So I jumped in. Now, as far as what the mayor can do, the mayor's not a dictator. So just because I get elected doesn't mean, hey, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Everything involved in city government is a collaborative process. The city council is the legislative body, so they're the ones who have to put together city ordinances. The mayor is in charge of overseeing the various departments like planning and zoning, parks and rec, and so forth. And the mayor can also break city council ties on votes, I believe. And all of this actually is, I obviously have never been mayor, so I can't tell you exactly the details of the entire job description. I mean, anytime you've ever interviewed for a job, if you've never had the job before, you don't know every single detail of the job. It's just being honest. And I obviously right now don't have access to city attorneys where they could just detail all these things, right? So that's obviously another collaborative effort. I'd have to work with the city attorneys to find out what's legal, what's possible. And I'm just putting that out there in advance because obviously I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things I'd like to explore or try, but it obviously has to be within what the mayor's legal ability is. It has to be within what's legal. It has to be within the process of the system, and it has to be within the collaborative input of all the other people who are involved. So let's just put that out there. But the mayor can break city council ties. The mayor, I believe, has the ability to veto the city council, but it can be overridden with 5 votes. And so that's one of the reasons why we would need a little bit of turnover on city council for that to even be a reality, because city council, for the most part, votes 5 or 6 people on most of the growth issues that I've seen. There's been a couple that have been turned down, but for the most part, it's oftentimes Mr. Gookin will vote against something and the rest of the council will vote for it. And there's been a few votes that have been kind of 50-50 or whatnot, but a lot of the votes that I've seen have been 5 or 6 votes for something. So you obviously have to have a little bit more of a mixed council in order for the mayor's veto or tiebreaker to come into play. And then, like I said, the mayor oversees the various departments. So planning and zoning, for example, the mayor would oversee that department. The big issue with the mayor, aside from the actual things that the mayor does, is the mayor's kind of the sole representative of the city, or seen as kind of like the leading voice of the city. So the mayor has the opportunity to provide leadership. The mayor can steer the conversation or start a conversation on topics or things that are good for the city. And I feel like that's one of the things, I'm not going to talk about Mayor Widmeyer too much, but I feel like that's one of the things that certainly there's an opportunity, let's say, because I feel like there hasn't been a lot of direction or leadership or strong driving the conversation on growth here in Coeur d'Alene. The mayor can initiate some actions. The mayor can get some people together. The mayor can hopefully, organize some of these other mayors, other cities together to hopefully get them working on some comprehensive plans as well. And a big thing that the mayor can do is the mayor can generate political will to do things. When I went and talked with David Callahan and got his white paper, it was at this political meeting. He was saying that they basically are willing to do whatever as long as there's political will for it. So what does that mean? It means as long as people want it done. If there's enough people who are asking for it, who are asking for something to be done, then the planners will do it. It's just their job to do what people want. So part of what the mayor can do as a leader is to generate political will, to hopefully steer the conversation, to help people to be talking about and raising awareness about things that would be good for the city, so enough people can get excited, get involved, get motivated to be able to participate, to say that they want that, so things can get done. And that's a big problem, I feel like, with the lack of leadership in the city overall right now, is that there's a lot of things. The city is kind of behind the 8 ball as far as growth goes. It's grown from 35,000 to 52,000 over the last 20 years, according to the census data. That's a 50% increase. So with that 50% increase, where's the leadership and the direction? There's not any sort of rigid comprehensive plan. There's kind of no real direction. There's no real guidelines. Everything's just kind of willy-nilly. Let the housing market just get out of hand. Small businesses, local businesses, whatever. They'll just do whatever. So leadership so far has been very flimsy overall, and the city's kind of behind the 8 ball. So getting elected mayor, for me, is not the end of the journey. That's the beginning. That's where all the work has to start, as far as getting the conversation going, generating the political will, getting people together, figuring out some solutions, working with the city's attorneys to find out what exactly is legal, what are all of our options, and being able to put those things together. So David Callahan's white paper, a couple of things that they talk about in there that I thought were really good is the city of Petaluma, California, I believe, limited building permits for the city because they also had some plan as to how those were going to be distributed in a point system, and they were able to limit growth in their city by limiting the building permits. And I think that's something we should absolutely explore. And they were sued in court, and the court ruled in their favor, so there's legal precedent that that is something you can do. Another option is overlay zones, which is essentially like as I understand it, a zone that you overlay across existing zoning restrictions that has additional restrictions on top of it, typically due to environmental factors. But I think we should look at that. Another thing that he talks about is let me get the acronym for this, the transfer of development rights, the TDRs. That's something that's kind of interesting. It seems like it's kind of more of a way of, managing density, but I actually would be interested in some sort of variation on that, as far as maybe like a density credit type of thing, where there's a certain amount of, like your area has, let's say if it's 2 or 4 houses per acre that are allowed. So whatever is the size of the parcel, it has a certain credit relative to that density allowance. So if you wanted to increase the density in an area, you would have to actually, let's say theoretically, decrease the density in another area to get the credits in order to, build something more on that parcel. So I think something like that would be pretty interesting to explore because it would allow for density to be increased, but it would also require a density decrease in other areas. And that's something that's also similar to this transfer of development rights. So there's something in there that I think is pretty interesting that we should at least explore. I would love to have that conversation. And so relative to the other videos that I made on density, on outside investment, and on multinational corporations, here's a few suggestions, things that I would like to explore. Obviously, we need some sort of rigid, comprehensive plan. It has to have, strict zoning understanding, let's say. There can't just be all of this coming to the city council willy-nilly. Oh, here's an exception. I don't know. Yeah, just put 12 houses per acre over there or whatever. The comprehensive plan needs to be rigid, and it needs to be based on preserving what we have now. The comprehensive plan can't be made by urban planners who just want to see the area grow. That's unacceptable to me. We obviously need to end the URDs, urban renewal districts. There's no nice way to say it. Coeur d'Alene's not an urban area, so we don't need urban renewal. Seems pretty obvious. We should look into historical districts. I've mentioned, Mr. Gookin has mentioned this, and I'm a big fan. I think that certainly many neighborhoods should qualify for some sort of historical designation that would in large part allow them to be kept as they are. Any place from my research that I've looked at that has, so I mentioned the population, right? The population is supposed to go from 167,000 to over 300,000, right? So what's the easiest way to stop that? The easiest way to stop that is there's houses right now for 170,000 people or whatever it is. So you just don't build houses for another 130,000 people in the next 20 years. Pretty obvious, right? So you have to figure out ways to do that because there has to be at least a small way to accommodate growth. But as in my second video on outside investment, if the real estate market gets too overheated, that in itself will drive growth and density. So you have to do something about the real estate market. So as far as outside investment goes, the option here, or what I should say is that the perspective here needs to be that we need to cool down the real estate market. It needs to be cooled down. The option isn't, to be clear, the option isn't do nothing or everyone just makes a ton of money on real estate and just, then we're not going to have growth. If you want the real estate market to go up 47% year over year every year, and you want rents to go up that high, and you want the market to just get out of hand, then inevitably growth is going to come with that. A lot of growth is going to come with that. So the option is do something to cool down the real estate market, or the real estate market will just get out of hand and drive growth on its own. So those are the two options. If you want unlimited real estate and growth, sorry, 1 second, I'm going to take a break. Okay, my apologies. Sometimes the doorbell rings the campaign headquarters. But the options aren't just let the real estate market go bananas and have no growth. The growth is going to come along with the increase in the real estate market. So if you want to slow growth, you have to slow down the real estate market. You have to cool down the real estate market. A big reason for that is because as housing prices and rentals get out of hand, there's lots of people who are getting pushed out of the area and local workers who don't have places to live, even to rent. So the demand is going to come down the pipe for there to be government subsidized housing, lots of studio apartments, other apartments, Section 8 housing, whatever. You're going to get the density in the ways that you don't want if you don't preemptively cool down the real estate market and make housing that we have that's existing now affordable for the people here. Those are the two options. Doing nothing and expecting growth to go down is not an option. So, how do we make the real estate market cool down? I think we should explore property taxes on outside investors. So anybody who lives outside of the state, we should look into being able to charge them a property tax for living out of state. Excuse me. As I mentioned, I'm just on the cusp of being fully recovered from COVID, but my lungs are still a little tight. We should look into rent controls. Obviously, cooling down the rental market, having controls on the rental market would, number one, make it less attractive for outsiders in particular, but anybody to be purchasing rentals and making money off of rentals. And number two, that would make the rental market affordable, meaning that people could rent the existing apartments, or rent the existing duplexes, houses, and things like that for the most part, which would lower the demand for people talking about affordable housing, more high density in apartments. Those are the options. You either have to make the real estate market more affordable, or you're going to get apartments and density. Those are the two choices. So I'm not saying I'm a big fan of rent controls, like in an abstract sense. We're like, yeah, I like rent controls. I'm not a big fan of that necessarily, but I don't want density. I do not want more density. You got to pick your poison. I think we should look into rental licenses. So the city, as I've heard, 5% of the city's housing right now is VRBOs, vacation rental by owners. We should figure out as a tourist town how many of those we would like to have and issue that many licenses that people can rent their house out with. And then the rest of them, if you don't get a license, then you can't have a VRBO. You need to sell your house. So I think that would be a great way of putting a cap on how many rentals we want to have as a city, whether that's for VRBOs, for Airbnbs, those types of things. I think we should look into that because that would put a cap on investment. If you can't, if you're a Californian or whoever, if you can't get a license to be able to rent a VRBO, you're not going to buy a VRBO here in Coeur d'Alene. Demand goes down, the prices go down. And then there's also non-government solutions to this, because it's not just that the government can fix all this stuff. Government can obviously do some stuff, but I think there's also some non-government solutions. And one of those, I think that it would be great if we could come up with a culture of selling houses to our neighbors or to Idahoans first. Of course, I can't stop somebody if they want to get an extra $20,000 on a cash offer from somebody in California. But if you care about your city, if you care about your town, if you care about North Idaho, we should culturally be looking into selling to our neighbors and friends here first. And I have some ideas outside of government how we can kind of start working on that, but it's for another time. But certainly as mayor, I would encourage that. Sell to your neighbors, sell to Idahoans. Let's keep Idaho for Idahoans. As far as multinational corporations go, what can we do? Well, first of all, we cannot try to get them to come here. I think that's basically just asking for your city to be ruined. We obviously would try to give them no tax exemptions or any sort of benefits for coming here. We can look into possible taxes on out-of-state companies that then that tax money would somehow be able to benefit local entrepreneurs. That's something that obviously I would have to talk with city attorneys more, talk to city council a lot more, get a lot more input on. But I'm definitely open to the idea of taxing out-of-state corporations that want to do business here and using that money to promote, help, grow local business. I don't have an exact plan for that, but I'm into the idea. And then as the mayor, I want to foster a culture of shopping local and advocate for local businesses. I don't want to get into an argument with people about various things. I don't want to get into an argument with CDA Press or Kootenai Health about any of the COVID stuff. I think it should just be factual reporting, and we need to really tone down the fear porn aspect of it, the sensationalism of it, because that's really hurting the tourist aspect of the town. We need to be, people of course have the option. If they're scared, they can stay home. If you are worried, you can get your groceries online. If you're, afraid of COVID, obviously, then don't go traveling or vacationing or whatever. But for our local businesses, for our local economy, we need to be promoting them. And they obviously can take whatever measures they like, but we have to tamp down on the whole fear porn aspect of everything and everybody getting excited about a lot of that stuff. The media has blown it out of proportion. I'm not saying CDA Press specifically, although, again, I don't want to get into an argument with them about it, but I think we just need to have a much more of an understanding that that's not good for us to have that blown out of proportion and for people to be making other people scared about it. Let's just stick to the facts and deal with the facts as they are. Let's not hurt our businesses by freaking everybody out. I mean, we're almost 2 years into this thing. There's no reason to be freaking out. So as mayor, obviously I would need to work with the city council on a variety of related ordinances. I would hopefully be able to work with other city governments coming together on similar comprehensive plans, similar stances, so that way we can slow the growth, keep it responsible and organic in all of northern Idaho. And as mayor, I want to generate the political will to get these solutions implemented. Like I said, becoming mayor is where it starts. And once it gets started, then it's all about generating the political will, having those discussions, getting people together, figuring out what kinds of solutions we can implement, and getting ahead of the ball on where all of this growth is going. Because right now we are very behind on where it's going. So I'd like to steer the conversation towards some sort of strict comprehensive plan, steer the conversations towards cooling the market so locals aren't pushed out and they can continue to afford and live here, and create a culture of shopping local and advocating for local businesses. So those are the things that I view outside of, in city council meetings, the leadership, the vision of being able to propose solutions, talking to people and figuring out creative ways to be able to come up with a more, not just a comprehensive plan for density, but a comprehensive plan for the growth, how we can make sure that it's responsible, how we can make sure that it's much more organic, and how we can make sure that the people who are driving the growth, the multinational corporations, predatory outside interests, how we can figure out ways to make them pay for it. Another thing I think people have mentioned is that impact fees in Coeur d'Alene for builders haven't been raised in 14 years or something like that. Yeah, we need to look at that too. There's a variety. I'm willing to look at everything. I think we need to look at everything, explore everything, generate the political will to get a lot of these solutions implemented, and start putting together pieces that are going to keep Coeur d'Alene special. So I'm Michael Lentz, and I'm running for mayor. If you like the message, then you obviously can register and vote on November 2nd, and I'm going to need help if this is something that people want a real option on, if they want somebody who's going to talk about growth honestly, who's going to actually deal with it in a way that is substantial, then I'm putting the option out there, but you have to get involved and you have to help because I can only go as far as people are willing to push me. So you can check out my website, strongyoungmayor.com. My Instagram is strongyoungmayor, at strongyoungmayor. And I'm going to be, over the course of the next month, trying to put together some activities, trying to get the message out there, and trying to give people an actual option on somebody who will make sure that the growth benefits locals.